Why should we even be conserving species? By conserving biodiversity and namely endangered species, it creates a well-balanced ecosystem which is important for humans too. It purifies the environment by giving us clean air to breathe, a healthy water system to support diverse marine life, and arable land for agriculture production. If the ecosystem fails, the health of humans is also at risk. Trends have appeared in the number of species extinctions and appear to mirror the rise in global human population. Scientists suggest this rise in extinction is in part due to human activity through the destruction of habitats, as well as the consumption of animals as a resource, and elimination of species due to commercial gaming, which includes poaching and hunting. This is often referred to as the beginning of the sixth mass extinction. Single species conservation arose as an ecologically based approach to conserving a single species under the impression that this would have added benefits by helping to conserve many species. However, there was little consideration for the interactions between members of different species in a named environment or area, and this led to the rise of many issues compared with the ecosystem conservation plans of action. Single species conservation acts as a gateway to secure funding, which helps generate research and plans to conserve species. However, the cons, which include but are not limited to aiming conservation at charismatic species and failing to consider species-species interactions, may outweigh the benefits.
Many of the organisations which fund wildlife conservation are charities such as the World Wildlife Fund. They use recognisable charismatic species in many of their donation appeals, including orangutan, tigers, and pandas. Scenes of an orangutan swinging through desolate landscapes or burnt down rainforest habitat are extremely emotive and effective at getting public donations. As around 70% of the WWF's income is from donations and gifts, these emotive appeals are vital to securing funding. Money that is raised goes into managing thousands of acres of orangutan forest habitat alongside anti-poaching and anti-pet trade strategies. Managing the Bornean rainforest is not only benefiting the orangutans, but around 20,000 species of plants and hundreds of mammal and bird species, many of which are endemic to Borneo. Single species conservation can be positive in terms of making it easier to secure funding for conservation. However, it can also be used as justification for harmful captive breeding programs. SeaWorld's orca breeding program is one such example. They claim to sustain the population, but many studies have shown the detrimental effects of captivity on both the physical and mental health of orcas. Animals that are bred in captivity are rarely successfully released into the wild, but do require substantial amounts of money that would be much better spent on preserving wild habitats so that the wild populations can thrive. Fortunately, the breeding program ended in 2016, but they continue to breed some species such as beluga whale. There are, however, benefits to some captive breeding programs as they give species that were once extinct in the wild the chance to be reintroduced from captive populations in zoos. For example, the Arabian oryx completely disappeared from the wild in 1972 due to overhunting. The species was reintroduced from captive populations and there are now herds in the wild. Single species conservation can also be valuable in the protection of keystone species. The sea otter was hunted extensively in the US and many local populations were wiped out. Conservation efforts have since restored some of these populations and significant increases in biodiversity and ecosystem health have been reported in these areas. Otters consume sea urchins, which if left without predation can destroy kelp forests, leaving the seabed uninhabitable. The return of the otter populations keep the sea urchin numbers under control and has subsequently assisted the regeneration of the rich ecosystem that the kelp forests provide.
Single species conservation may threaten other species sharing the same habitat. Conservation efforts within the Florida Everglades came to a halt when the Everglade Park Service and the US Fish and Wildlife Service disagreed on what protected bird species to cater restored habitat towards. Both species require different conditions for nesting and feeding, and so conserving one species would be at the cost of another. In situations such as these, the least charismatic or ugly species will often suffer. Invertebrates are often the victim of single-species conservation, as few invertebrate species ever get conservation interest, despite the widely acknowledged ecological impact they have within global ecosystems.
Ultimately, the benefits do not yet appear to outweigh the negativities that accompany single-species conservation. Further work to focus efforts on all species seems to be the way forward.